double tap here with John Fitzen, Mitch Velos, and Grover.
David Grover.
David Grover, excuse me.
You can backhand her. I did. Look
Hey.
at that bump.
That was the lawyer.
Yeah, right?
yeah.
He's smart.
I'm protecting double tap. I'm her legal guardian, so to speak.
Exactly.
Well, let's talk about a little bit about the Constitution. Let's talk about, going to the airport with knives.
Oh, those are two big subjects.
Yeah.
Did you want to go like
And assault weapons. Well, which one you want?
Yeah.
one,
Essay first.
one college semester for each subject?
Right?
You know what? Let's talk about Feinstein and assault weapons and all the stuff that she's doing. Let's do that one. And why we should have assault weapons.
Well,
And it's
if we
not
talk,
assault
I'll tell you
weapons.
what, if we talked about the Constitution first, it would be easier to get into why everybody
Okay,
should
let's
have
do
us.
about the Constitution first.
Is it what was it, David?
Yeah.
David? And you tell me if you disagree with me, because they tell me you are a student of the Constitution, which means you've read this enormously voluminous pamphlet over and over
I
again.
prefer to think of myself as more of a fanatic.
Yeah, no.
Good term.
He does have
He's
a friend.
he's a
He-
constitutionalist.
You know
that's
who
good.
his friend is that he really likes?
Sheriff Mack?
No, he's on CNN. Tell us.
Oh, my old buddy Piers Morgan. Hi, Piers. How are you doing out there, buddy?
You mean the subject? Not the citizen Pierce Morgan, the subject
Yeah.
Pierce Morgan.
But anyway, okay. so-
Well, just to make it very easy, as I've read the Constitution, anyone who's read the Gun Control Act of 1968 knows that it's that Congress claims the authority to pass that by virtue of the Commerce Clause. The Commerce Clause is part of Article 1 of the Constitution, which is where the people gave Congress authority to do certain things. Well, they numbered the things, and anything that's not numbered in there, Congress doesn't have the authority to do. Well, if you read the Commerce Clause, it's pretty easy to see that the Commerce Clause was originally enacted so that states wouldn't pass tariffs, so that if you're involved in interstate commerce from one state to another, let's say you're selling saws from Massachusetts to New Mexico, and so you have Arkansas saying, hey, we're going to charge taxes on the transfer of that saw as it goes by wagon train to New Mexico. Well, that's what the Commerce Clause was made to do. That Commerce was not going to allow the states to do that kind of thing. And to prove to our listeners that the Commerce Clause was never intended to regulate firearms. Back in the 20s, Congress saw that bootleggers were killing each other over booze turf. Well, so they wanted to keep them from killing each other with machine guns, so they put this enormous tax of $200, back then it was a lot of money, on the machine guns. Well, why didn't they use the Commerce Clause? Well, it's because they read the Commerce Clause, and it meant to them, the plain talk of the Commerce Clause was, it was meant to keep states from putting tariffs. It wasn't meant to regulate firearms,
Yeah,
see. So that's why I don't think that the Commerce Clause, under any stretch of the imagination, was intended to allow a big, fat federal statute like the Gun Control Act of 1968 and its hundreds of pages to be enacted and to control firearms. It's a ridiculous thing. Unfortunately, the courts have validated that. We've got to push them back.
Well, the courts have validated that, but there have been several interesting cases. I wish I had known I was going to be doing this today. I would have tried to find a copy of the original ruling. I want to say it was
Was the Lopez case? Or?
it was like Idaho or Ohio. Somebody had manufactured a machine gun that had never crossed the state line, so they argued it on that position.
Well, Arizona had one like that. It was decided by the Ninth Circuit. There's a judge in there that grew up in a communist bloc country, Judge Kaczynski, and he understands the meaning of freedom. And even though it was a kind of a bad case, bad facts make bad law, But Judge Kaczynski held that because this machine gun was manufactured solely in Arizona and was not intended to be sold across state lines, that Congress didn't have the authority under the Commerce Clause to regulate that machine gun. Now, that was a 2-to-1 decision, and it was overruled by the en banc. Is that the case you're thinking about?
No, this case predates that one by probably 15 years. It's a
And
long ago
and
case.
maybe he cited that case, the Ohio case.
There's the other one with the fellow who had made a batch of machine guns and suppressors and ran basically the argument that since 1984 the federal government has given up its power to tax the item. Since this fellow couldn't register the gun, and since the government doesn't have the power to ban it, it's not allowed in the Constitution. This fellow who made it was able to run the argument that he was not in violation of any law, and the court agreed with him. I'm pretty sure this one was in Idaho, but once again, now unfortunately for him, he had a bunch of suppressors, and he still could have signed those up, so he went to jail anyway. But at the time, it was kind of an amazing study.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting as you study the Commerce Clause, and the court has drawn back on the Commerce Clause several times. The Lopez case was a Gun-Free School Zone Act case out of Texas, and the court said that Congress had exceeded its commerce authority. But now we're getting into some pretty technical stuff, and I hope we don't have our listeners falling
I'm
asleep.
sure they're going to debate it in there.
Well, anyway, so if anyway, so our founding fathers wrote the Second Amendment, which was an enactment of a right, an inalienable right that already existed, and that was to give the people the right to keep and bear arms. There's several historical writings that talk about the fact that the people had to retain enough weaponry to actually exceed that of any standing army. Okay? Yeah, and we've fallen way below that since our founding fathers wrote this.
Well,
But
the humorous joke on this is you've got the Piers Morgans of the world talking about how the Second Amendment was written when they were talking about single-shot muskets and so on. Most of the artillery that participated in the American Revolution was private property.
yeah, and I'll tell you, we still have militia. The well-regulated militia is the National Guard, and the National Guard has F-16s. They have
Apache
artillery.
helicopters.
Yeah, they have
everything.
all of that kind of armament, and that is potentially for the use of the people to oppose federal tyranny. So it's not like we have no defenses just because we're relegated to arms that we can carry, like rifles and pistols. But the point is, the people were intended to have more firepower than the standing army. If you take away semi-automatic firearms at this juncture in our nation's history, what you've done is you've cut the legs out from under the Second Amendment.
Exactly. And then we're going to lose if the government decides. And all you people are done are saying, yeah, John, it's not going to happen. It could happen. It could happen.
Well, look we have 310 million guns and 80 million gun owners. That is the largest infantry in the world, many times larger than Red China even. And so, you can't discount the fact that the armed citizens of the United States are a deterrent to federal tyranny.
Yeah.
Right.
In every country, Dave will even tell you, me and Dave were talking about, every country you see, England, all this other stuff, look at how their rights are being taken away. Why do you think Pierce dumbass Morgan's here?
Some theorize that he's here due to legal issues revolving around his previous employment.
Nah.
I don't know the details other than there's some question about that.
But you're his biggest fan. You know everything.
Well, I've only been a fan of his for a few months. I didn't know about him before.
Hey, you know what? In one of your previous things, you said send them back to England. Somebody commented and said, we don't want them. You guys
You
keep
guys,
them.
I love England. I mean, hey, I'm Welsh, I'm Irish, and so yeah. So you guys, hey,
Actually, I finally found a country where he would be comfortable. It's a little country north of South Korea. We can send him, Michael Moore. I understand. What is it?
Dennis Rodman?
Yeah, Dennis Rodman is in with the leadership.
Yeah,
so
there you
there's
go.
probably plenty of employment opportunities.
They, getting back to the assault rifles, hey, it's our constitutional right, and we need to keep the Constitution the way it is. I mean, it says, the Second Amendment shall not be infringed on.
Well,
everything should be thrown out. All this crap that they're doing, even machine gun laws.
Would Pierce
bullshit.
Morgan, with his argument that the Constitution only considers muzzleloaders, would Pierce Morgan then say that the right to free speech doesn't apply to computers or television?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they didn't have television or computers back when the Constitution was written. So doesn't the First Amendment right of free speech apply because of the technology? Well, no. Obviously, modern equipment, whether it be televisions or semi-automatic firearms, apply. The Constitution applies. The rights still exist.
Well, there you go, guys. Hey, that's just another one. Thank you, Dave. We always love having Dave here with us, and Mitch. Of course, we're going to be doing an ongoing thing with Mitch and Double Tap. She's on the ball on stuff. She knows quite a bit of stuff, but.
Well, what we're going to try to do, hopefully, is try to reveal some of the hidden legal traps relating to weapons that I see in the courtroom all the time. I'm still an active lawyer. I defend gun owners, I defend gun dealers and gun manufacturers. And
One of my buddies that you helped get off, he was the only guy out of, how many guys got busted in Las Vegas? Was it something like 10
Yeah,
guys?
there was
He was the only guy that got off, and thanks to Mitch, and they tried to get him on a straw sale.
Yeah.
All those other guys, they didn't have the money to fight it, and they went to jail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, but thanks to Mitch. Keep your edges sharp, your powder dry.